Elon Musk, who owns X, is a father. Act like a father. Think about children.
My name's Ian Henderson, and I'm the founder of the Naked Truth Project. What happens when you bring 6 leading voices together to talk about pornography? In the P-Word Talks, I travel across the country to have honest, eye-opening conversations with experts including Dr. Paula Hall, Helen Taylor, Dr. Alex Bailey, Dr. Ellie Hansen, Lord James Bethel and Dame Rachel de Souza. They come from different backgrounds: mental health, safeguarding, politics and public advocacy. And they don't always agree with each other or with us at Naked Truth on every point. But they do agree on this: porn is causing real harm, and it's time we talked about it. Rachel, thanks for joining us for this conversation. So you're the Children's Commissioner for England. Let's start by you just explaining, what does a Children's Commissioner do?
Great question. So look, my role came into being 20 years ago after the death of Victoria Climbié, who was killed by the people who should have loved her the most, her family, but all the professionals around her missed it. So this role was created to take children's voices to government, to parliament, to protect and promote their rights. So, on any given day, I might be in youth prison, I might be down at Kent watching, and talking to children who've come over as illegal immigrants. I might be in a hospital or in a school talking to children. I survey children. We take their voices and make sure that over in Westminster, they really understand the situation of our children so that they can make good policy and good laws.
And so you're not a politician, you're not like elected in that sense, so you don't have an allegiance to particular political parties. You're kind of here to represent children to politicians.
Absolutely, I'm totally independent. I'm a thorn in the side of all of them because my job is to take the challenge to all of them. And actually, when that's happening, I know I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, and so your history is in education?
Yeah. So I was a teacher since 1991. I was a head teacher for 20 years, ran a group of schools. And actually it was that lockdown experience that, watching us close schools and look at the impact of that on children's well-being, the rise in mental health concerns, worries, seeing children struggling with cost of living and families struggling with cost of living, that made me want to apply for this job. And as Children's Commissioner, what I'm really keen to do is sort of make sure that lockdown generation, because that's my 6-year term, that lockdown generation can be as little damaged as possible and can thrive and can get through this to successful adulthood. And as adults, we need to support them, and we need government to support them. Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about schools, and we're going to talk about children and a little bit about legislation as well, but the focus in all this conversation is children and young people. I know you were part of launching something called the Festival of Childhood recently, and at that event you said that you felt that there is a crisis in childhood. How do you think the experience of being a child has changed or deteriorated even in recent years, and particularly how does that link to pornography consumption, which is obviously our main topic and thought?
Look, I think where we see some of those changes, particularly, is around children's mental health. There is, I every year take the data on how many children are trying to get mental health support, how many get it. There's a tsunami of mental health concerns, anxiety, worries. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. But for me, one of the key reasons is children's interaction with the online world. That is one of the things that's changed the most. I can remember as a head teacher, actually, around about 2010, 2011, really Facebook, online apps, social media started to be used by parents more, started to be used by children more. Phones started to become ubiquitous. And I've seen a huge change since then. If I'd have talked about, with classes of children about seeing serious pornography back then in the 2000s when I was a head teacher, or 2010, it would be very minimal and actually quite just sort of natural curiosity, some interest. Yeah. We've seen something fairly mild. Now, I'm afraid to say, because mobile phones have become ubiquitous and they're internet connected, pretty much every group of children I speak to and have seen really serious, hardcore pornography that's degrading to women, and it's become really normalised, and it's quite shocking actually. And not just pornography, but when I ask kids, 10, 11, 12 years old, have you seen, violence, gore, beheadings? Nearly whole classes are. And it's that connection to the internet through that phone in their hands day and night that is really giving kids access to this. And I think it's affecting them. And the research, is ongoing, but I think it's absolutely clear to me that they are not, a 10, 11, 12-year-old, an 8-year-old is not emotionally developed enough to cope with what they're seeing. So they might have the language, but their emotional development just isn't there. And it's having a massive impact.
Yeah. My youngest daughter was born the same year as the iPhone was launched, and she's 17 now. So any child really now, it's only been part of their life. They're digital natives is what sociologists call it. Porn's been around forever though. You've hinted at it already, but what do you think are some of the differences that digital pornography is making on the minds and lives of children, these digital natives who this is all they've ever known? Some of the people watching or listening to this, they might remember porn when it was a magazine or a VHS or whatever, but this is different. Why is it different?
Well, look, one of the first pieces of research I did, nationally representative research, with children was asking children, when did they first see porn? So one of the first things that's different now is the age they see it. So what my research showed was that they're seeing the average child, on average children see at age 13, 25% of a class of 8 or 9-year-olds will have seen porn. Then it's the content. When you actually talk to children about what they're seeing and you go look yourself, it's hard to believe. But one of the first things I did was call in Pornhub and the porn companies, and they said, we don't want children on our sites. Great, put age verification on, but they clearly could access those sites. But actually, where most kids tell us that they see porn is on Twitter, is on normal social media. So if you go on there and have a look at what they're seeing, it isn't just like some silly, cheeky picture that you might. You'd expect some teen to be naturally curious about. It's serious stuff. Yeah. It's serious stuff, and it's affecting, and my research has absolutely shown it's affecting how children feel about relationships. It's affecting actually affecting their relationships. When I asked 18 to 21-year-olds, how many of you have experienced a violent sexual act? Half of them had. And most of them, including the girls, thought this would be something that they ought to enjoy. Yeah. So what they're seeing online is actually really impacting on their experiences as older teens and young adults.
You've mentioned that research and that report that you published in 2023. I'm curious, I'm thinking, you were saying that surprisingly a lot of children and young people, and this is one thing you highlighted in the report, were finding porn not by going to a porn site, but on social media, for example. Yeah. Twitter, I think, was the top of the list, wasn't it, or X now?
Absolutely, yeah.
I can't think of a 12-year-old who's got Twitter on their phone, but yeah, how is that? Explain how that happens. Do you know?
So I think it comes across from the porn sites. So I think it's taken across from the porn sites, from what we know, and then kids will go on it and show each other it. Yeah. I've made pretty serious, tough journalists swallow hard by showing them some of the things on then Twitter, now X. Yeah. A lot of the young people I talk to will say, look, it's not X, it's triple X, it's 3X. And they, I fetch companies in and challenge them. And frankly, there is, I use Twitter for an X to look at what's happening, to get immediate political things or what's happening on the news. But obviously the algorithms send you what you're looking at, and there is a whole other world there, and on other social media sites, Snapchat, other places. heinous things happening, even though the intention is not that. That's where children are seeing it, and showing, even if, you know, you've not, and our research shows this, even if you've been really careful, put parental controls on, you think your child is fine, someone else is showing them it in the playground or on the school bus. And I'm seeing that more and more.
What other things did you find in doing that report, that research? What other things did young people tell you, children tell you?
Particularly for girls, it's affecting their own body image and how they feel about themselves. They think they should look like this. I mean, wherever I go, I have queues of young people saying, I'm not sure if I'm normal. I'm not sure if you know, I look all right. I'm not sure if my body's right, so I'm seeing this stuff on here. So there's a big piece there of concern. They also talk a lot about getting themselves into real trouble, you know, sending naked images, you know, being blackmailed, and getting into some really nasty things on those sites. And also the kind of bullying and follow through that can happen after those things. So, I mean, I can clearly remember a girl, and this is how social media works really. It's not just the porn that you see, it's what you do with social media. So a girl who'd, in one of the schools that I had oversight of, who'd from a really troubled family, right? And she had a really difficult life, and she'd had a one-night stand with a boy, if you'd call it that. You know, she had sex with a boy. She was year 11, a fifth year. And of course he put pictures and put it all around the internet. And you know what she did? It was so bad, it was 24/7. And this is the thing about the online world. She left a note and said, look, this is what you all want, went into the local woods and killed herself. Now that, I'd never seen the level of impact like that. And we've got to ask ourselves some serious questions about teenagers and children in the online world if we're getting, you know, and I could give you countless examples of that. So those algorithms, but also bullying, also the kinds of things that children are seeing, being exposed to and doing, and then what happens after that, it's really troubling.
Yeah. I remember reading, I think in the report, you're talking about a girl relaying her first kiss.
Yeah.
And tell us about that.
So look, a lovely girl. So I basically constantly fetch older teenagers into the Department for Education to talk to them about their experiences so that we can try and help and understand. And one young girl, she literally, first boyfriend, lovely, innocent, sweet relationship, going for going out, and goes to, to give her a first kiss. It's a great moment in a young girl's life. Puts his hands around her neck and tries to strangle her. Yeah. Like, why? Because he thinks he's seen it on porn, seen it from the porn he's seen off social media, thinks she'll enjoy it. Yeah. And again, that, when we looked at nationally representative survey of 1,000 over 18s, the percentage of them that had experienced violent sexual acts as younger teenagers was massive. It was about half of them. And I mean, you think about, wanting children, because I'm not at all prudy. I mean, we need good sex education. We know that children are going to be curious and interested and be thinking about how to form relationships. But who would want that for a sweet, for a young girl or a young boy? Who would want them to think that was, what they should be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're in schools, part of our work in schools, one of the things we will talk about is looking to porn as a way to educate you about sex and relationships is like trying to pass your driving test by watching James Bond car chases. Absolutely. Or playing Mario Kart. It's an industry that's trying to entertain, as in James Bond and gaming is, but so is porn. It makes its money from not trying to educate you, but actually show you things that are unrealistic and those
unrealistic things. And what we're seeing more and more are teenage boys getting porn addicted, which is absolutely getting in the way of them being able to form normal, natural relationships both now and in the future. But I saw it with a child recently. I was with Secretary of State for Education, a previous one, was talking to a small group of children in their office, and 8, 9-year-olds, and a lovely little boy got very upset talking about what he'd seen, and I took him to one side and said, "You okay? What have you seen?" And he clearly was describing to me that he'd seen porn, but didn't have the emotional capacity to understand it. And I was just able to tell him that it's not real. It's acting. So don't worry about it. And that was it. He was calm. It's not that we need to teach our children all about all of this before they, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's just like, it's fantasy land. It's not real. And actually, I think we need to be getting that message out more. And I think there's a job for both parents and schools here, as well as government.
So let's talk about schools briefly. Now, again, obviously that's your background too. Could you elaborate on what you think the role of schools is then in kind of addressing the influence that porn might have on children and teenagers?
Yeah. One of the great things about education in this country is, since its inception, since compulsory primary education at the end of the 19th century, our education system, as opposed to European and other education systems, have always been to have a concern for the kind of moral, personal development. And so we're not just about teaching subjects, we're about helping young people grow up. And I think schools have a massive job here, both in terms of ethos, so keeping children safe, keeping them well, helping them thrive and looking after them pastorally, but also in terms of delivering really good relationships and sex education. And look, every single group of young people I talk to, when I say to them, I had a room of 200 the other day, and I said, stand up if you literally thought your relationships and sex education at school was good. And maybe one person did. I mean, we've got a real problem with how this is taught. And yet kids tell me, and I've surveyed 1 million children, they tell me one of the things they'd like to change in the curriculum is that they want really good education about adult life, about relationships, about sex. They want to know, and it's the emotional side as well, and they want to be able to talk to their teachers who are trusted adults about what they're seeing, and what is it, and how should we be navigating through this. So I think that subject of relationship sex education needs to be rethought about. It needs to have better status. And I mean, kids want to know lots of things as well. It's not just that. They want to know all sorts of things about adult life, whether that's how to have a mortgage, or how to keep yourself healthy. They constantly are interested in these practical things. What to do about seeing porn? What should we look at? How should we handle our online usage? So I think there's a big job for our teachers here in our schools here, and I think we need to dive in. I think schools have stayed away from it because over the last few years there have been these kind of culture wars up in Westminster about what we should be and shouldn't be teaching our children, and all sorts of issues. But look, I'm going to tell you something awful now. I was talking to the chief medical officer the other day. He was showing me the syphilis and gonorrhea data. Right, since 1918 and 1945, since data began, we have the highest rate of syphilis and gonorrhea, and the second fastest growing group is 13-year-olds up. We need to do more to keep children safe, to keep them well, to keep them healthy. We need to be explaining and talking to them about how to do this. So I think there is a massive job to do for schools, and also about how we treat each other as people, because the dehumanizing side of porn, where you're degrading a woman or using a woman, or a man, frankly, for that matter, is something we've got to tackle and challenge, because, like it or not, children are seeing it. Yeah.
I think one of the things that teachers might say, and as a former teacher and a head, you'll know this too, is they will say, absolutely, we see the need. What we don't have is the resource and the capacity. And there is this pressure on all fronts to achieve in all sorts of areas. And so things like sex and relationship education, PSHE, those kind of topics often get squeezed into the 10-minute tutorial at the beginning of the day. Can you really talk about porn well in 10 minutes on a Friday? When you're a French teacher, normally, is there a need for an increase in budget as well as an increase in expectation around this kind of topic?
So look, I think we have a curriculum review happening at the moment, and I have given the children's voice and evidence about this to that curriculum review. Absolutely, should be key. I mean, it is part of the national curriculum. It needs to be taught. We do have experts who can teach this. There are all sorts of things we could do to resource it, and it absolutely shouldn't be Friday period 2 with a PE teacher. This is some of the most difficult and important work, and actually you will find young people actually incredibly interested. What I do get lots of particularly boys telling me, oh my goodness, we've just had like 20 lessons this year on consent and nothing else. And what they're saying is consent's important, but actually we're concerned about how do you build a relationship and what is, what we're seeing, and so we need to do so much better here. And we can do it without, in an age-appropriate way. As I said, the 8-year-old just needed to know what they'd seen wasn't real. They didn't need any more than that. A 15-year-old is going to need so much more.
So we talked a little about schools. Like us to move and think a little bit about what role like the tech companies play in this too. I know you kind of recently published a report on mobile phone policies in schools. And you indicated that you would potentially support a similar approach to what's been introduced in Australia. Firstly, what is being introduced in Australia, just for people so that they know, and what are you suggesting might be helpful?
Australia is banning social media for teenagers under the age of 16. Now, look, I come to this, I am not a natural banner, because I think if you ban something for teenagers, it's like saying that's the most interesting thing in the world. Let's go try look at it, right? Yeah, absolutely. But I have engaged for 4 years with the tech companies. They come in to see me, and I say to them, "How many underage have you got online? What are you doing about age verification?" I ask them, kids tell me that you're not answering their complaints. What are you doing about it? I ask them all the questions I need to ask them, and I am deeply unsatisfied with their answers. These are multi-billion pound industries, making a vast amount of money off our children and off our nation. And I think that they are, basically self-regulation totally failed. I am not satisfied with the answers they give me. They're not doing what they should do. The algorithms are frankly immoral, and we only need to look at people like the deaths of children like Molly Rose and others to know the impact those algorithms are having on children. And basically I get mealy-mouthed words, we're doing this, we're doing that, rubbish. They know exactly how old children are who are online. They know, they absolutely could play a greater part in solving this. Now over the past couple of years, we've had this groundbreaking legislation, the Online Safety Bill. I'm hopeful that that's going to make a difference, but not that hopeful. It should make a difference. But we've just had the Children's Code published by Ofcom. This was the much promised piece of legislation about how we were going to keep children safe and the protections that were going to be in place. Well, deeply disappointed. I actually think it's more about a piece of legislation for the tech companies. It's a piece written for the tech companies. I want to see Ofcom and the government writing a children's code for children and parents, sharing it with them, then going back in 2 years' time and saying, has it got better? And addressing the things that children tell me all the time in my research. They tell me their complaints aren't answered. They're getting onto sites that they shouldn't be getting onto. They're seeing things that, they shouldn't come across. And when they complain about them, they're not taken down. There are faceless, nameless websites to put your complaint into. It's just not good enough. We've got legislation in this country. It needs to be a line in the sand, and we need to see change. So my view is, if the Online Safety Bill doesn't work, I'm watching Australia really closely to say maybe that's where we need to end up. But wouldn't that be a shame? Because actually, we want young people to be able to enjoy the internet, enjoy apps, never having to be bored again on a Sunday afternoon or not find something, in a good sensible way. And instead, I'm still hearing heinous stories about what children are seeing on there. And I find the tech companies absolutely morally culpable. They are not doing what they should.
I mean, you mentioned not being a banner, and totally understand that. And I'll ask you another question in a minute about tech companies, but what about schools? Would you ban mobile phones in schools?
I was really interested because nobody knows, or they didn't know, nobody knew what schools were actually doing. So when you sit in Westminster, you hear one political group saying, there are phones everywhere. You hear another saying not. So I thought, I'm going to find out. I've got powers to get data from any public body. They have to give it to me. So I wrote to all head teachers and they did a survey, basically said, what's your mobile phone policy? What's your view? Now, I was quite heartened. Pretty much all primary schools completely restrict the use of mobile phones. Don't bring them to school, can't have them, or have some system where they take them off them at the start of the day. Yeah. About 90% of secondary schools had some form of restriction. Some lighter than others, but in the main, it's phones away in your bags or taken off in the morning. So I was quite heartened to see that. Well done to heads for doing that. But one of the really concerning things that I found when I asked heads, what are your biggest concerns? And that could be concerns about anything, even though they were restricting mobile phone use. Children on social media was their second biggest concern after funding, I think. It was their second biggest concern. And that's because obviously social media and phones go home. It's 24/7. It's what children are doing outside and online that cause so much anxiety. And I mean, we've recently been discussing the Netflix series Adolescence, haven't we? And it's that moment where at the end in episode 4 for me, where the father goes into the boy's bedroom and there, he's equipped with so much tech equipment. And, the shock is you think you're doing something good for your kid, giving them access, to the online world. You've bought them this fantastic tech. Not for 1 minute do I think parents think that, even dream that children are seeing the things that they're seeing, that their daughter's picture might, of doing a sexual act behind a school building has now been sent right around the whole school community, all of these things. I don't think parents for one moment think tech has been used that way. So I think it's school, but I think it's home as well. Yeah.
Just going back to tech companies for a minute, and basically you saying you're not satisfied with what you're hearing from them at the moment. What do you think they should be doing then?
Look, the online safety bill is clear. They should be protecting children from harmful and illegal content. They should be making sure that no underage, there are clear age restrictions, that no one is online who is underage. In my surveys, what we've seen is that most children are going on these apps at 11, 10. That's below the age. They know how old the children are on their sites. They've got the technology and they know. They should be taking these children off. They should have proper, strict age verification. They should be answering children's complaints. They should be taking down harmful material. And when I ask them why they're not, they often mumble something about resources or we're doing better or whatever. It's just not good enough. These are our children. This is the law in this country. And I want to see a robust approach from government.
Yeah. Do you think, this will be listened to and watched in other countries as well, kind of internationally. So, the UK has got this bill and this act. And as you say, we're waiting to see how that will be implemented and enforced, which is probably, how much bite does that regulatory kind of group, Ofcom, have. Yeah. But universally, obviously, these companies, they're global. Is there something there a message you would want to give those companies that isn't about legislation, but is something else?
Look, frankly, Elon Musk, who owns X, is a father. Act like a father. Think about children. And I think we get into this freedoms, regulations, debate. These are children. It's a completely different thing. I stay completely away from what adults do, or, you know, free speech issues with adults. Fine, that's for adults. You're old enough, your brain is developed, you can make your own decisions. Children need our protection. And I think, you know, I want Apple, I want X, I want all the social media companies where, you know, children see these things, to take it seriously. And they are global companies, and they should do better.
We've talked a little bit about the importance of talking about issues like pornography at home as well.
Yeah.
And obviously that is always going to be an awkward, tricky conversation for lots of parents. I think the younger you start, the easier the conversation gets as they get older. But from your experience as a children's commissioner, how aware do you think parents are of how easy porn is to access for children?
It's interesting because one of the groups of parents I hear from the most are parents of 9, 10, 11-year-olds who are just starting to get really worried about this and what should we do? And they actually want advice and want some support, and they get conflicting support. I wanted to answer that question myself, like how can we help parents? So I brought in hundreds of young people who were over 16 and asked them, what do you wish your parents had known about the online world, about porn, about all of these things? And the answers were amazing. First of all, I mean, the young people's experiences were hideous, absolutely. Every single young person, these were children at good sixth forms, at university, children with great parents, young people with great parents. They all had a catalogue of stories about what had happened to them and happened to their friends. This is everyone. So I think that's the first thing parents need to know. So I said, what would you want your parents to do? So they did have some really good advice. It was, first of all, they need to know a bit about what we're seeing and what we're on. And it's not really an excuse to say, we grew up without it, we don't know what we're doing, we're letting our parents, so they encourage their parents to find out a bit about what they were on and what they were doing. It was really interesting how, my word not theirs, but what a lot of the things they talked about were about boundaries. So they were like, don't let us take our phones to bed at night. It's such a sensible thing, but don't give us our phones too young. Let us be children. So this is words coming from young people, I think, because what parents hear is, everyone's got one, give me a phone, but actually what the young people were playing back to me were, oh gosh, I'm so relieved mine didn't give me one till whenever, or I got mine too young and saw terrible things, or, the other thing was, talk to us. So a lot of young people said we were afraid to talk to our parents when we got into trouble because we thought they'd take our phone off us or take us, ban us. And they said, please talk to us, not just that one chat. You talked about the awkward chat about sex or about whatever, where you're all embarrassed and run off afterwards and never do it again. It's like, talk to us regularly in an age-appropriate way about the things that we're seeing, and we need you. We need you to be the adults. We need you to protect us. And I really want parents to take that message. You can't just give them it and walk away. And parenting is hard. It's the hardest job we do. It's not easy, this one. But what I will tell parents is, when I ask that large group of young people, you grew up with this. When you're a parent yourself, would you give your child an internet-connected phone and apps, before 16? The answer was absolutely not.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about legislation. We've touched on it a bit already, but I just wanted to kind of ask this question. How seriously do you think parliamentarians are taking the issue of young people and pornography? It's certainly, I started Naked Truth just over 10 years ago, and it was a different time then. I think it was a harder conversation to have. People weren't as willing. Do you think people are more willing? Do you think there is more desire to be talking about this at a parliamentary level?
Yeah, I do. I've put on briefings for parliamentarians. I've regularly been asked about it, and I think there's some real passion from parliamentarians all sides of the House, Lords and Commons, to grapple with this issue. And the issue is, how we make sure kids have digital access and, digital rights. They get the best of the online world whilst protecting them from, some of these heinous things. And yes, they are far better at talking about pornography as well. I think 10 years ago, you'd have got lost into debates about freedom and not a real understanding of what children were seeing. I think awareness is far greater now. But I think there are political dangers. We are seeing the world order change, right? We're seeing, all the issues around tariffs and regulation and what the, sort of glacial changes across the world. And I think we need to really be clear about what we believe. We've passed this online safety regulation. Regulation for children is the right thing to do. And I need the government and parliamentarians to stay strong on that, because there is a bigger prize here. And that bigger prize is the well-being and the healthy thriving of our children. We mustn't sell that.
How much do you think, with just the rapid evolution of digital platforms and all that, how realistic is it for us to expect policy to keep up with that?
That's exactly what people like Ofcom and others have been set up to do. It's hard. Children are always like the canary in the coal mine. They're always going to get places first. But I think we have a duty to, and indeed, I think my advice to both parents and government and others is you've got to stay abreast of it, because this is the world your child is living in.
Yeah. Is there anything you're currently working on? You've talked about different reports and things that you've done in your time as the commissioner. Is there anything coming up that's
Look, one of the big things for me that's related to that, you just asked me the question of how about parliamentarians and parents keeping up. I've just done a piece of work, and we're continuing it, on nudifying apps. It's a perfect example of something that wasn't really on anyone's radar. So we've got generative AI. It's going to completely change the world. So what do we find? We find apps being created that can take someone's head and put them on a naked body, show it's normally girls and women in pornographic and other positions. And you might think, oh, that's just some kind of bit of technology, it doesn't impact. Well, 25% of girls that we've spoken to have either seen themselves, a friend or a teacher on those, been put on those nudifying apps. It spreads like wildfire with the young. And this is a massive example of where boys have a different experience of it. But where girls are like telling me they are as afraid to have their picture taken, they're as afraid of these nudifying apps as they are of walking home on a dark night, because they are terrified about seeing themselves shown naked and passed around. Now, it's illegal to make images of children, naked pornographic images of children, and quite a few of the boys who are making these images are, doing an illegal act. But the point is, the nudifying apps are not illegal, and they should be. This is somewhere I'd like to see the government saying, we can deal with this straight away. Let's get ahead of it. Let's not wait for the problem. You know what girls say to me is, what good is there in nudifying apps? Right there, what is there? Is there any benefit? Is there any benefit?
Yeah.
So, if it's illegal to make naked images of us under 16, then it should be illegal to have the app. Yeah. So this is where I want to see the online safety bill get sharper, and us get much sharper about seeing what our children are experiencing and protecting them. As the adults, we have to protect the children, or they will look back in 20 years' time and ask us what on earth we were doing.
I want to ask you about 20 years' time. What do you hope society will look like for children and young people in 20 years? What law maybe now would you love to pass that might impact children in 10 years' time? Or just how would you like it to look?
I think we are in a situation that is like the Wild West. We've got dopamine addicted adults, we've got dopamine addicted children whose brains are not even developed enough to cope with it. When I walk down, if I'm walking down any road, I watch adults on their phones walk out into the street because they're so like they can't get off them. Come on, this has got to change. In 20 years' time, I would love to have seen us get to grips as a nation with our internet-connected phone addiction and actually have truly enacted the online safety bill so that we protect children. I want children to be able to grow up as children and not to have to experience, seeing the most degrading, heinous pornography that make young girls question whether being a female, what it is to be a female. I want boys to feel, not to feel that is in some way something they should measure themselves against. So we need to sort this out. And I think in 20 years' time, I hope in 20 years' time, we will look back and say, what the hell were we doing? It was absolutely wrong what we allowed these companies to do, what we allowed our children to do. And as a society that we didn't take action sooner. We need to take action now.
Rachel, thank you so much, not just for talking to me, but for the work that you've been doing with children and young people. It is amazing. You've talked about numerous reports, and I'm sure lots of listeners or people watching this on YouTube or something will be thinking, actually, I'd quite like to hear more about that or read those stats or some of those stories. Is there a central place as Children's Commissioner you publish those?
So I have my own website, Children's Commissioner's website. If you just put in Children's Commissioner for England, the website's there. Every single report we've done is on there. And there is also on there really good advice for parents and really good links to organisations that can support too. So please do use it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Rachel. Lovely to meet you.
Right.